Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Sincerely ULOMA. I have a lot to talk about today, and I'm going to start as usual with a proverb. But today, I'm going to give us two proverbs because this matter gets us be heavy matter, heavy for mouth. So I actually have two different things that I want to drop as proverbs, and then I will take it from there. So the first one is, and I'm going to actually act this one. It says, Anya mahu na ntị mo, anya mahu na ntị m, anya mahu na ntị m. What that means, direct translation is, may my eyes never see my ears. And what it's really saying is, the act that I'm referring to is so shocking and unnatural and abominable that one wishes that one never witnessed it. It's actually a cry of horror at an unspeakable deed. All right? So that's proverb number one. The second one, I might not be as dramatic with that one, but it says, Onurolu nwa mee ngwa ngwa. I'll say that again. Direct translation says, when a child cries out suddenly, respond, and respond quickly, because it is not only the child's parent that responds. Okay? And another way of saying that is that, as we know, we are into communal existence. So we always have that communal approach to raising our children. Everybody's child is everybody's child. That is what Africa is about. But the meaning and application of that particular proverb is that serious wrongdoing or danger becomes the concern of the whole community. Some acts are too grave to remain private and remain with just the family. So it's based on that I shall be talking today. And my topic for today is Come Winter Come. I was listening once to the late Ravi Zacharias. He's, the apologetic of apologetics, if you know anything about that. And in the course of talking about what he was saying, he made an allusion that I never forgot. He said that sometimes God sends lesser prophets, and in this case, he was referring to winter as a lesser prophet. And he was saying that winter came in that particular instance to help end the war, because everybody, the war was so strong. I can't remember which war he was referring to now. But by the time winter came, everybody knew that they couldn't handle, the violence of the weather, the vicious, cold of winter. And so people were no longer as able or willing to fight. I'm calling on winter for the reasons I'll be explaining right away. Now, I can't go very far without referring to my book. I'm not sure I've ever mentioned that I have a book that I wrote, Guilty But for Grace. I wrote this book at a time when the Lord needed to humble me. You know how you're flying, you're going on, and it's almost like you're unstoppable, and people begin to see you in a certain way, in a certain light. Sometimes not because of anything that you're even trying to do, but just because, that's the perception that they tend to get based on how you carry yourself and so on. And so when the Lord told me to write this book, it was like, come back and, sit down, and let's start from the very beginning. And what he did was to make me write this book that, made me very vulnerable. I was bringing out parts of myself that I had never shared with anybody. And then I was putting it in a book that was going to go public. And it was a lesson in humility, because I was dealing with various aspects and levels of pride at the time, and there was the need to really just soft pedal. What I did with the book, therefore, was to make sure that no matter what it was I talked about, it always went back to dependence on Jesus, dependence on Christ. What I did was that I wrote this book, which is called Guilty But for Grace. And there were 7 topics that I addressed. Now, this book was written almost like a biography, or is it I don't know, a biography? And I was sharing with the world what it looks like to be a young woman in today's world. I was showing the world some of the bad decisions that I made. And I was sharing them, not just as mine, but more like as something that young women go through. Majority of the young women that we know and wear, go through different aspects of the things that they find themselves having to take decisions that are sometimes a bit too adult for them, but they take them anyway. So I had 7 different topics. The first one was Kissed a Girl, and it was talking about lesbianism and the kind of entry, basically, that concept has in a young woman's life, especially when you go to like an all-girls school and so on. There's always that opportunity for those who are already in the act to co-opt you or co-opt some people, into the act also, in one way or the other. Then the second one was the second chapter was Baby Love, right? And Baby Love was basically talking about the vulnerability that came with being a young woman and not knowing what was what. And I think the major part to that was that we loved fully, we loved completely. Infatuation for us meant real love. Mills and Boone, silhouette romance, and all that. And that was really who we were and who we grew up, later to know, was not necessarily the way life was or was supposed to be. Chapter 3 talked about abortion. I called it flushing it out, and I think that was my best written chapter, because it was still, you know, 30 years after. It was still quite vivid. 30 something years after, actually. So it was easy to write about the pain and the stress and the trauma of abortion. Drug addict. A drug addict emerges. Talked about my foray, or my attempt. Let's be honest, the habit that I formed smoking at a certain part of my life, and all that looked like. Chapter 5 was In Love with the Bad Boys. There was just this thing, when we're growing up, and I think it still happens, where the good girls tended to, really, really want the bad boys, and vice versa. Somehow the bad boys liked the good girls, and would spoil them, as it were. And, yeah, so I talked about that. Chapter 6 was Femme Fatale, and I'll be talking a lot about that in this episode. That's why I brought the book out. Femme Fatale was really about when the woman emerges from the girl, and you begin to realize that, I have certain powers, just because I'm a woman, I can do this, I can do that. You can refer back to my episode where I talked about femininity as a better way of showing the strength of a woman than feminism. So, Femme Fatale is about that. And then the last one is the confusion called marriage. And in the confusion called marriage, I talk about how most people got married for the wrong reasons. But that's not the topic that we're addressing today. One day we will address it. So, what are we addressing today? Before I go into that, I want to say something. I want to make it clear that the book was never, therefore, about, making it seem like any of these topics was right in any way. On the contrary, the structure of a book was such that I would list, the topics. Then in each chapter, I would tell the stories about whatever that topic was. And then at the end of the chapter, I would now give a corrective message where I would say what was supposed to be right at that time. And then I would give some Bible verses to support what I was saying. And I would pretty much be pointing the reader back to Jesus. So that was really what this book was structured to look like. So before I go into what I want to go into, I want to read another part of the book that I thought said a lot about my feelings at the time. And that's from the preface. I said something. I said, I could have played smart and resisted God with my logic and reasoning, with wisdom from below, with the analysis, psychoanalysis, permutations, assumptions, and suggestions that made sense. But mercy said, no, I am not going to let you go. I was referring basically to the struggle I had to write this book. It was a fight to finish, God and I, because I may have battled for up to about 2 years or 2.5 years of knowing what he was telling me to do and fighting it. So it came to a point where I knew I couldn't resist it anymore. And I go on to say, I have learned that when you catch a vision of God's plan, nothing else matters. You begin to understand the need for yourself or for self to die. You prepare to bear the shame. You pick up your cross daily and you truly follow him. That was what I did really by writing this book, because I talked about certain aspects of my life that, oh my God, that I wish didn't happen. And the reason why I was doing that was so that somebody will read it and make sure that those things don't happen for them or to them. There's a craze that's in the world today where we are trying our best to understand how it seems okay to young women, for young women to dress in a manner that it is now almost an epidemic. Let me read this part of the book. I was trying to talk about that aspect of growing up, where you get to that point as a young woman and you begin to think, oh, I'm all that, I'm, that pretty, I have such a lovely body, and, it's not enough to stay at home anymore. I want everybody to know it, So I was talking about that power, and I said my slimness was not the awkward, thin, and boyish kind that some of my friends were still struggling with at the time. No, my family boasted of hips that don't lie, like Shakira sings. I was as shapely as I was slim, and as well built and even structured as any supermodel. I remember some people used to call me Agbani. Hey. Look at me now. Anyway, and I knew it. Like every other girl my age, I had started to master my universe. I had begun to understand the power of my femininity. And better still, the weakness of men around such awesome girl power. I was intimidating. I was confident. I was daring. I was eager to push this power as far as it could go, just to see men squirm. It was just a superpower that made me glide instead of walk, that made me particularly pleased at the attention I received when I strolled into a party or a gathering. A superpower that made me dissatisfied if two or more guys were not pining after me or seeking my attention at every given time. That was the norm. On this particular day, I can say now that it was the devil himself that lured me into this act. Sigh. Most of that afternoon still hazy in my mind, but one part can never be forgotten. I set out that day commando, totally commando. I had put on a midi-length flared skirt that draped over the contours of my hips and backside very provocatively. To all intents and purposes, I was very well covered. My top was a regular short-sleeved shirt, which I wore over the skirt and tied in a knot in front. I can't remember now if I had makeup on or not, but it didn't matter. I was on a mission. On the streets of GRA Ikeja, I strolled down Joel Ogunaike Avenue, heading nowhere in particular. I turned up the Joy Girl walk as I swayed my hips and rolled my backside, and just smiled as car drivers made quick back glances as they slowed down when they drove past me. It was as if every car slowed down to have a look at the front of the owner of this derriere. I was enjoying this. I was now playing a game in my head called How Many Heads Will Turn Before the End of the Street? I was playing against the loser who said none. Then it happened. To be really honest, I do not know how it happened, even though I later reasoned out the why. I was still on my high horse, my nose in the air, and my strut now mastered into a rhythmic, mesmerizing sequence when I heard and felt a thought on my bum. It was the most painful slap you could ever get on a bum, especially one that didn't even have panties on to save it from the impact. I was certain that the tennis players at the Lagos Country Club heard the deafening sound of this assault. It was the most intentional, well planned, and well executed hit and run in the history of man. I didn't see them coming, and I certainly didn't see them go. It happened so perfectly and so fast that I felt that I had dreamed it. Did I? I learned my lesson well. It was probably one of the cars that had driven past earlier and seen what the presumed daughter of Eve was up to. They had seen the mischievous display of seduction at its best, and they were having none of it. They probably drove the car around and came again from behind, knowing that I wouldn't be expecting them to slow down. They drove up so close that one of them could reach out full body through the window to get a good, painful smack across both butt cheeks. Or perhaps it was an angel of the Lord that came to save me from myself. Yes, that was quite a lesson. And I look back and I think about the now, and I kind of get it. I sat down at a Starbucks yesterday, facing the road. Now, this is summer in Toronto, and the first thing that happens when summer comes in Toronto is that everybody removes their clothes. Everybody, clothes are just off. Do you understand? Shirts are, tied to the, when it's a guy, he ties his shirts to his shorts and he's, bare chested. The ladies can't get enough off, and I didn't quite realize how pervasive that whole act had become until yesterday when I sat there and I had my Bible open because I was doing a study. So I was writing, and every time, I looked up for air or I looked up, I would see another set of young women in various stages of undress, And I was just thinking, why? why is this happening? Why must they be naked? What is this about? You know, I've asked that question in so many ways. I've addressed it with so many people, and I still don't get it. Now, the story that I read out of my book was of a 19-year-old, maybe 20-year-old girl. But I'm talking about young women who are in their 25s, 26s, maybe even 30s, and they are on the streets. They are wearing next to nothing on top because they leave very little to the imagination. Everything is out. The cleavage is a silly word for what you have on display. And they are wearing shorts that are designed not to cover the butts. I don't even know who makes things like that, or if they cut it themselves. Do they buy them that way? Are they sold that way? I mean, does an organization that creates denim shorts actually sit back and say, let us make shorts where the butt cheeks show? What kind of wicked organization would do that? Anyway, so here I am. Just every time I look up, I see, a bunch of 3 girls or a bunch of 2 or 4 girls or whatever, and all of them are competing on how much of their bodies they are showing or they can show. And my mind boggles. And I remembered that when I was writing this book, I had actually talked with a niece of mine, because at that time, I had a problem with her dressing. And I'm not one to keep quiet when I feel strongly about something. I'm one of those people who, like the proverb I stated, said, other people's business tends to be my business, especially if the person whose business is supposed to be is not doing their business. So yes. So I called my niece and I said, why are you doing this? Why must all this show? And she smiled, she laughed. Oh, auntie, you've come again. I said, yes, I just need to understand it. You know me now. At least explain to me. Maybe if I get it, I won't harass you again, And she said, auntie, but it's not that bad now. I said, it is. It's bad because I don't even know why you people are doing it, because the guys that you're doing it for don't even like it. Now, this was me now stating what I've heard my sons and their friends say. They don't like it. They really are nauseated by the amount of flesh that the girls are showing. They don't like it. It's not appealing to them. They don't want it. They don't like it. It makes them uncomfortable, And she told me, but we're not doing it for them now. It's not like we're doing it for the guys. So I said, okay, this is interesting. Because, I mean, you heard me read from my book. I was clearly doing it for the guys, And she's telling me, no, we don't do it for the guys. I said, so who are you doing it for? And she said, auntie, we're just doing it to pepper them. I said, pepper who? She said that they need to pepper the girls. In other words, it is a competition. It is a competition. They are actually doing it to see who will outdo themselves. They are actually wearing the most curvaceous, dresses, the most, in our day, you could never wear leggings and leave the house except if you were wearing a shirt that covered your entire hips and bum area, or a t-shirt that covered your entire hips and bum area. But no, not today. Today, they will wear their gym lettered or whatever it's called, and they're on the streets. Nothing else. And they're like walking down and daring you to say something or even look at them in a particular way. So I'm looking at this and I'm like, how are the guys managing? What does it look like for them to be at the street corner waiting for the light to change so that you can cross the road, and and 3 bots come and stand in front of you, what are you supposed to do? How is it supposed to make you feel? I really believe that devil is here. All right? Because it really just doesn't make any sense to me, because I even struggle at knowing or believing or wondering if they even see anything wrong with it. I'll go back again to the excerpt of my book that I read. I knew what I was doing was wrong. I planned it, I knew it, and I did it. But I knew it was wrong. And nobody needed to tell me it was wrong. Though, God sent his angels that slapped that bomb, So, is it fashion? Are they doing it because they're being fashionable? Are they doing it because it's now the new normal? Are they doing it convinced that they're covering enough up? Why are they doing it? It can't just be to pepper them. So it makes me think about the other side, because maybe I should have talked to a few more people, not just my niece, because maybe it's about attracting men or attracting relationships, attracting sex. Is that what it is? Because that's what it looks like. That's what seems to be on display. And you? Why? It's like there's a competition to shock. Like, how can I shock the world today when I get into the streets? And then you look at your wardrobe and you look for what shocks the most so that you can wear it and get into the streets and show them, pepper them, shock them. I don't know. I was thinking about this so much that I remembered another, I quoted, what's her name? Hannah Ali, Muhammad Ali's daughter. There's something she said about dressing that I and referring, of course, to her dad's very famous stance on how a woman should dress. I'll read my intro and then I'll read what I quoted. I said, have you noticed that the most valuable things in the world tend to come shrouded, covered? Muhammad Ali was once quoted in his talk about modesty with his daughter. This was called from his daughter Hannah Ali's book, More Than a Hero, Muhammad Ali's Life's Lessons Through His Daughter's Eyes. And now I'll quote. When we finally arrived, the chauffeur escorted my younger sister Layla and me up to my father's suite. As usual, he was hiding behind the door, waiting to scare us. We exchanged many hugs and kisses, and we exchanged many hugs and kisses as we could possibly give in one day. My father took a good look at us. Then he sat me down on his lap and said something that I'll never forget. He looked me straight in the eyes and said, Hannah, everything that God made valuable in the world is covered and hard to get to. Where do you find diamonds? Deep down in the ground, covered and protected. Where do you find pearls? Deep down at the bottom of the ocean, covered up and protected in a beautiful shell. Where do you find gold? Way down in the mine, covered over with layers and layers of rock. You've got to work hard to get to them. He looked at me with serious eyes and said, your body is sacred. You are far more precious than diamonds, and pearls, and you should be covered too. Fantastic. Fantastic. I mean, fantastic. There is more value to those things that are covered, because the things that are out there are free for all. Anybody can have them and touch them. So why would I want them? Or don't you want to be wanted? You know, I was in church this morning, and it's not my regular church, but I was worshiping there, and the pastor was talking about something similar. He was talking about how he had a very good relationship with his wife, and in the course of talking about this relationship, he was now talking about how that grew. The times where things were a bit difficult, the times where they had this time apart, where he was going crazy, and it took the church, and his pastor and his friends to hold him accountable and help him through a very difficult time. And he said he struggled at that time with pornography because he was alone, and it was hard to be alone, basically, and not have that person that he was sharing his life and stories and so on with. So he got into pornography, and when his people, his pastors, his friends, and all that found out what was going on, they came like closer to him to make sure they held him before they totally lost him, if you know what I mean. And that was all well and good, and he got past that and has gotten past pornography. But he brought it up today and said, do I still struggle? Hell yeah. How won't I? All you have to do is get on the streets in Toronto, and it's all there. And then he just made a straight comment from the pulpit and said, I don't know why it's happening, but I hope nobody came to church today in a short dress or in shorts, those shorts that they are wearing these days. He described exactly what I described. And I was like, that's my problem, oh dear pastor, that's my problem. Because the girl who was sitting in front of me, her skirt was too short, and it wasn't even a denim skirt, it was frilly, and so what that meant that once she goes outside and the wind starts, and there's a lot of wind and breeze in Toronto, so once she goes outside, everything is going to be open. So she doesn't care. So I felt for the pastor is really what I'm trying to say, because he in fact, the last thing he said was nakedness is everywhere or something like that. It is. It's so in your face. So in your face. There's something that I know. I'm not going to say I believe. I know that they are not thinking this through. I know. I always have so much to say, but they're not thinking this through. Let's even talk about the hygiene of it all. It's hard enough for me to wear a shirt a skirt that's like knee length, and then when I sit down, I feel my, the back of my knee. Is it the back of my knee or the back of my thigh? I don't know. If I feel it touching the chair that I'm sitting on, especially if it's not in my house, I'm like, I don't like that. That means my skin, very sensitive skin, very close, to, parts of me that don't want to be open, I don't like that feeling. I don't like to know that, my thigh is touching, the chair that I'm sitting on in the doctor's office, perhaps, or in the bus, or in the train, or I don't like that. And I'm talking about the back of my knee or the back of my lower thigh. These people clearly have very intimate parts of them that are touching very public things. Ew! What are they picking up from those places? Because if you sit on a bus where somebody that has one disease like that has just gotten up, and then you sit with your bum like that, boy, what are you taking in? What are you absorbing? You know, what that brings to mind is that stupid thing that happens in Toronto in June, where, oh gosh, this world has gone to the dogs. You know, there's actually something that happens every year in this town that I live in, where people, young, old, black, white, whatever else, go stark naked on bikes and do like some kind of parade, riding a bike, butt naked. I'm talking 60-something-year-olds, 20-something-year-olds, 16-year-olds, passing on the street, sitting on public bikes, which is why I'll never ride any of those bikes. Sitting on public bikes. I hope Tangerine actually does a job of disinfecting those bikes every day. I see them take them and that's an aside. Butt naked on the streets downtown. It's the same thing. Those people drop their diseases on those bikes, and other people come and collect them wearing, shorts or skirts. You know about the skirts, the short skirts that are shorts at the back and, a skirt in front, but they're shorts, talking about real hot pants, Where is the man supposed to look? I was with some men at a wedding in Lagos, Nigeria once, and this was a cleavage situation. Every young girl that came was competing to show as much of her breast as possible, as long as her nipples didn't show. As far, that seemed to be the rule, because you could barely see the nipples, but you could almost see the nipples. You know what I mean? So the men were like, that they are tired. That these days that they actually pray before they go for an event. And they, just struggle to look everywhere and anywhere but at these women, at these girls. And they just come, hey, hello, uncle, Ha. And the man will be like, you could just do and go, come mal what I'm doing with my life, It's the devil. It's the devil. I think this is the height of perversion. This is the height of, getting people to a point where they are no longer thinking, where they are no longer thinking about any type of, purity is even too far. At least any type of decency. Where did decency go? Why is there no shame? What's going on? What is going on a large scale? Because it's not really just about Toronto. It's in Lagos. It's everywhere. It's in every city. And it's all the ages. It's young people. It's old people. It's married people even. I don't know in any way that this is right. And what I would like to do is make a call. I hope somebody who reads this or who watches this, can take up this challenge that I'm about to, to say. Can young women get into a challenge, a dressing challenge, where we prove that we don't have to show skin to be sexy? Cover up and still be sexy. I hate that word, and I shouldn't be using it, but it's really the word that best describes what I'm trying to say. Is it possible? And I think it is. To cover your neck, cover everywhere, and yet have that delicate, feminine seductiveness that is decent. That's a call. That's a call to young women. I dare you to take me up on this challenge. I dare you to prove that you understand what I'm talking about. I dare you to shame the devil. Shame the devil. Because he's having a field day at your expense. That's all I have for today. Please cover up, guys. Let winter come. Oh my goodness, I forgot that part. Remember I told you that my topic is Come Winter Come? And I talked about how winter can be a lesser prophet at this time. That's what I meant. Let winter come, oh, let winter come. Let me see who will be showing me butt cheeks on the streets of Toronto. Winter, snow, Bogboe, please come. Come and save us from this menace in Jesus' name. Amen.